Hello and welcome back to the Disciples of Zeus podcast. Today I'm here as always with Ethan and we're going to talk about the 4-Hour Workweek. It's a phenomenal book by Tim Ferriss. It's been on the charts for years and years and years since it was originally released in the early 2000s. But before we get into any of that, Ethan, what is your thought of the day?
My thought of the day is I'm currently watching a 2-part video about Robert Greene's book on the law of human nature and about rationality and how to become a more rational person is by accepting the fact that all humans are irrational. So that is my thought of the day.
Very nice.
And James, what is yours?
My thought of the day is that you can learn a lot about business and competition through gangster rap, because that's basically all that they do, is they just compete with each other and they use whatever tactics necessary to be able to take the other person down. And that's my thought of the day. You can learn a lot about anything from everything. But you weren't expecting that.
I was not expecting that at all. That's a solid thought of the day. I like that one. I like that one a lot.
Thank you, sir. But moving forward onto our regular scheduled programming, the 4-Hour Workweek. So as I mentioned in the intro, this is a book by Tim Ferriss. It was released somewhere in the early 2000s. I can't tell you what year because I'm not sure. And the principle of the book was pretty much, if you're a business owner, employee, or executive, you can go from being old rich, which is the amount of money in your bank account, to new rich, which is the amount of time and money that you have. So sort of as a multiple. The example that he gives is if you're someone who makes $40,000 a year, but you can work from wherever you want in the world and you only have to work, say, 40 hours a week, you're actually more rich than someone who makes, say, $70,000 a year, but they have to work 100-hour work weeks. They have to be in the office. They have rush hour commute every single day, and they have no time freedom. So the first person is richer than the second. We could talk about like the Keynesian economics of it, but basically their money has more utility to them because they have the time to actually use it and expend it. And the 4-Hour Workweek, it's split up in 4 separate parts, which spell out the DEAL acronym. And the DEAL acronym says define, eliminate. Help me out here, Ethan.
Define, eliminate. What's A? Automation.
Action. Yeah, action. And then liberate.
And then liberate.
Thank you, sir. Much appreciated. And so I think the most sensible way to start would be, what are your overall thoughts on the book? And then which section of the book did you find to be your favorite, Ethan?
I liked the book. Don't get me wrong. I thought it was very, very good. However, there are a lot of limitations to the book as well, because, as you said, it was brought out in the early 2000s. Obviously, for that time, it was very much ahead of its time for the early 2000s. Coming into like this new age of technology, there are some things there that if he was to rewrite it, I'm sure there'd be a couple of changes that he would make. But overall, a solid read. Definitely did get a lot from it, particularly in the last chapter, Liberate. It kind of focuses more on meaning of life and how the meaning of life is. You need to kind of like break it down, because if you just look at it at a definition point of view, it more so focuses on, we're just organisms, biological creatures just going through the universe. But when you break it down for like your own emotional type of point of view, it gets a little bit deeper than that. And it goes on about regarding servicing and purpose as well. And something I'm finding in my own journey is that if you want to grow, you need to give, which is a sense of service as well. So the more that if you maximize your giving power, you maximize your growth. So that kind of just cemented a belief I already had in my brain. But overall, solid read.
Yeah, man, absolutely. So when I was reading it, I found the define chapter the most prescriptive, because for those of you who haven't read the book, in the define chapter, there's a lot of exercises that Tim goes through. So he has one exercise, which is fear setting, which basically says, what's the worst case outcome? Is it irreversible? How likely is it? And he effectively says that risk is the probability of an irreversibly bad outcome. And so you take part 1, is it irreversible? Part 2, how likely is it? Part 3, how bad is it if it happens? And you sort of realize after doing this exercise, oh, what I thought was the worst case scenario is just like a temporary reversible inconvenience. So as an example, one time when I read this book, I was thinking about leaving my job, and it was, well, what's the worst case scenario? And I was like, oh, I'm going to be broke, but, I'm still like 17 years old. I live with my parents. In a first world country. I can get another job. It'll just be a temporary inconvenience and one uncomfortable conversation that I have to have with a manager that I don't even necessarily like. So laying it out like that, I found that to be very helpful and instructive. And then later on, he has the dreamlines, which is effectively you take these big dreams that you have for 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, and I don't think he does 10 years. And then you split them down into, okay, here's how much this would actually cost me. Is there a way I can do this by, like, instead of owning a Lamborghini, could I rent one for a week? And you're like, oh, that's actually a lot cheaper than buying a Lamborghini. Who would have thought? And you go down and you figure out how much each of these actions will cost you. And then you figure out the first couple of steps that you would need to take to get into these actions. So I had a period of, I would say, 2 years of not goal setting anything, but just doing these dreamlines every 6 months and ticking off as much as I can. I still have the note on my phone of the ones that I've missed. But, since then, since I stopped, I'm not caring, but since I stopped doing that particular exercise, most of them have been ticked off within the time frame. And it's like, you have to wonder if that's because they were going to get ticked off anyway, and I chose them to be too easy for myself, or because the act of doing the dreamlines actually helped with that. So I wonder, did you do the exercises in the book, and did you find them helpful?
I did a few of the exercises. At the moment, I did the not the dreamlining. That's on my list of exercises to do. But just to challenge myself, I did. Oh my god, what was it? No, it wasn't the asking the phone numbers one. It was one earlier in the book. I can't remember which one it was.
The coffee one?
No, it was something to do with people, and I can't remember which one it was now. Anyway, I did do one of the exercises. I can't remember which. It was like a few weeks ago because I was slacking with the reading. But if you want to take the most out of this book, definitely do the exercises. The phone number one is something that I want to do. I think that would be a bit of it won't be so much of a challenge for me because I'm already a pretty extroverted person. But I think it's just the act of just going up and being like, hey, this is a social experiment. Can I just grab your phone number? If you don't want to, then that's fine. I'll just walk away now. It's just that act of just being so vulnerable in that moment. It kind of just it makes you, it was the eye contact one. That was the exercise I did. Just keeping eye contact with people all the time, making them feel really, really uncomfortable. I did get in trouble once while doing that. I was walking the street and it was late at night, and this guy looked really, really sketchy, and he started chasing after me. But other than that, it was a fantastic exercise, and it definitely gets you out of that comfort zone of just talking to people and then looking away. Whereas like if you just hold direct eye contact with people, you kind of like make it a challenge, like a little bit of a game of who breaks eye contact first. So I very much enjoyed that in the book, but I need to do the dreamlining. That's on my endless list of things to do.
Endless list to do. Yes, sir. Well, it is a little bit off topic, but I know you've been doing a lot of reading and researching in the last couple of weeks, and I'm curious, what are like the biggest things on your to-do list at the moment?
Oh, alrighty. Let's look at my whiteboard right here in front of me. So I've got I've broken it up because something I did take from the book was making goals attainable, like in the sense of making shorter timeframes to get goals done or tasks done. Because I looked back on my time in high school, and the best results I ever got was when I put off the assignment like 24 hours beforehand. So I decided, well, if I'm going to break up my week, the goals I want to get done, I should break it up into two parts. So I've broken up the first half of my week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then the second half of my week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So what I will get done on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is I want to declutter my room because, again, in the book, he talks about minimalism. And I realized while reading it, I looked around my room and thought, well, I have a lot of shit that I should probably get rid of. So that's one of the things I want to do. Living room as well. Lots of things I have in there that I just don't use or don't really look at. So I'm going to go through that. My kitchen needs to be cleaned. It's not good. I just need to clean my kitchen. I have an appointment on Wednesday. Journal goals, dreamlinings on there as well. Record my podcast with my dear friend James Dan is also on there. Hopefully we get some more time next week to do it. And then some time dedicated to some research for my business that I'm focusing on at the moment. So that's just for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Lots of things there, but if you really break it down just for 72 hours, it's not that much to get done. So, yeah.
Plenty of reading and such to fill in the gaps.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you're not, I mean, something else I took away from the last chapter was in life, you kind of need to, learning is forever type of thing. And I'm a big believer on that. I know that you're a big believer of that as well, that you need to be learning all the time. If you're not learning, then you're earning. But if you're not earning, then you need to be learning. So Alex Hormozy right there for you. So at the moment, I'm not earning, so it is the season of learning instead. So again, something else that kind of just like solidified an idea I had in my head already. It's just kind of like just growing from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious, have you done the 10% off the coffee challenge?
The which one?
The asking for 10% off your coffee. So in the book.
I didn't do that because of the book. I actually did it last year because I watched a podcast with Gary Vee. And he had I can't remember the guest that he had on, but the guest just randomly said that he just randomly goes to coffee shops and asks for 10% off. And so I thought, well, that's a bit of a challenge. I'll just go into coffee shops and ask for 10% off. And I did it. And it was one of the worst experiences of my life. Oh, it was just so frustrating because the people would look at me like, what are you doing? Why are you asking me this? No, I can't give you 10% off. It was only when I walked into the bigger chains, like a McDonald's or a Starbucks or something like that, which I never go to, but I just wanted to see if they would do it. And they actually did it then. So there was a bit of success there. But how did you find doing it?
Well, I've done this a couple of times, and it's usually like about 2 years in between goes, just for me to like maybe not recover, but I guess regroup myself and remember it and go, yeah, I should do that again, and then psych myself up to do it. But Yeah, the first time that I did it, um, I did ask. I was like, "Could I just get 10% off, please?" And the person who was working at the counter was like, "Why?" And I was like, just because." And they didn't end up giving me 10% off. But like there was a gigantic queue of people behind me. And like just walking out of this spot, like the looks from every single person. Like I didn't feel like I was yelling at the top of my lungs, but the length of this line, the amount of looks that I got. Hey, I probably did save that whole 50 cents. But man, the social just like it's yeah, it's definitely an experience. And then I think since then I haven't actually gotten the 10% off since. So I don't know. I think I might have to try that this afternoon. It might not be on a coffee because, afternoon, but I'll figure out something and I'll ask for 10% off. Maybe a nice cheesecake. Gotta love
I
a good
reckon you could do it anywhere. Like it doesn't like coffee shops are just easy because their margins are pretty low. So and there's a big line, like you said, like they just want to make the customer happy so they can get more customers through. But I reckon like you could do it anywhere. Like even if you go to a restaurant, just be like, hey, can I get 10% off?
Hmm.
They may ask why, or they may say, oh, is it your birthday? Or do you have a student ID? Yeah, I do. Sometimes like a lot of restaurants I've found actually have hidden discounts. This is sort of topic, but they actually have hidden discounts sometimes. And if you just ask for something off and they say, oh, are you part of this group or are you part of this? And you actually are, then they'll just give you the discount anyway. So sometimes it actually pays off just to, you never know until you ask, pretty much.
Absolutely.
So
Yes,
always ask.
Very
But
true.
moving forward, back to the 4-hour work week, I feel like the start of the book very much focuses on like achieving that result, like the 4-hour, like getting to that 4-hour work week, because you go through like how to make your life easier by outsourcing menial tasks to call centers in India and whatnot. And then it goes through like how to create an online business and drop shipping and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But then I feel like the last half of the book kind of goes back to more like soul searching in a way. Like I know A is for action, but in that part of the book, it definitely does go through a lot of like, what do you want to do with your life sort of thing. And then that's carried out into the liberation chapter as well. So I think like for myself, where I am at the moment, I got a lot out of the start of the book, just because of the fact I was looking at all the tasks I do during the day, making coffee, shopping. I thought, well, shit, I'm going to Woolworths like once a day, once every 2 days or something. I thought, well, maybe I should stop doing that and try and make my life a little bit easier and just do a bigger shop and not just like buying as I go. So I kind of like started thinking about that a little bit more. But then the end of the book is where I got the most value, just because I'm kind of in that stage of my life of what the fuck am I going to do? So for me, that was like the biggest takeaway from the book.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. On a similar note, all the outsourcing stuff. The best advice that I've gotten is that if you're making like X amount of money per hour, and there's something in your life that takes like an hour of time, you can pay up to that amount of money to get it done, so that you can focus on these businesses that can happen 24 hours a day. So if you have, if you're making, let's just pretend $100 a day from your business, but you only have time to work on it for 2 hours a day, and it costs like, let's say if you give all your stuff to a dry cleaner, and that takes like 20 minutes once a week and all of your clothes are just done, they're done probably better than you can do them yourself at home, and it costs you, say, $40. You've just saved, let's say, 1 hour of time per day, because 20 minutes times by a week, divided by, you might have to go there twice a week, blah blah blah. If you save like in the ballpark of 1 hour a day, because you don't have to like put your washing in the machine, take your washing out of the machine, hang your washing up, go back inside, pull it back in, put it in your drawers, all these things. If you can outsource that for less money than you could make on your business, then you've just added 50% to the amount of money that you're making on the business. And so that idea of like outsourcing your like business time, that makes a lot of sense. And especially in the context, I know you're not doing this now, but if you're working like 9 to 5 here to here, and then you need to get all your chores done in this amount of time down here, then it doesn't leave that much time for you to slot business things in. But if you need to, you can work 9 to 5, have all your chores taken care of while you're at work, and then spend all of that extra time just working on the business and, doubling your income, if you like.
Well, I think in the book as well, like as you said, it's moving from old rich to new rich. And I think one of the biggest takeaways that you can take from the book is the dollar figure in your account isn't everything anymore in this day and age. You need to take into account time as well. I feel like maybe 60s, 70s, 80s, it was the dollar amount, right? Like it was the amount that you were making per year. Moving into the late 90s, early 2000s, it kind of switched into more, what time can I have back from my job? And I think Tim Ferriss outlays a very, very good way of achieving that. Not even if you want to like he puts it into the context of someone who wants to start a business and also someone who doesn't want to start a business. Like if they want to start a business and move away from their 9 to 5, that's great. But they also don't have the aspirations or ambition to create a business, but just don't want to be in the office that much and not work less, but do more with their time and still get paid the exact same. He outlines ways of getting out of the office and doing the work that you can do in a shorter amount of time. Like I know when I was in the office, I was making tasks for myself to stay busy for the 8 hours I was there. And it sucked. I hated looking at the time. I hated looking at, okay, so it's 10 o'clock now. I can go take my lunch break in 2 hours. If I take a few more contacts, then, I can do this. I can do this other task as well. I can try and get my manager out, etc., etc. I was creating tasks for myself to stay busy. I hated that. Now in a sales role, that's kind of like all you can do. Unfortunately, you kind of have to stay there for the entire 8 hours taking calls and whatnot. But say if you're in a different role like an executive and whatnot, and your role doesn't necessarily need you to be in the office all the time, and your working hours, like the work that you can actually do in the day is like maybe 2 or 3. I don't think there's anything wrong just going into the office, doing what you can do, and then leaving, because at the end of the day, you're just going to be sitting around doing nothing anyway. Might as well just dip. I don't know. That's just like my point of view.
Yeah, I think definitely there's a lot to be said for being paid for the actual work that you do rather than the time that you spend doing it.
Oh, 100%.
From a business perspective, it also makes a lot more sense because, instead of paying someone just to be there and sort of encouraging them to take longer for any given task, just to, as you say, fill up their day, keep it going, you'd be partially better off just saying, hey, here's what you need to get done. And, maybe you need to be on call for these hours. And as long as they can facilitate those things, then, there's no reason for them to spend 10 hours doing a 5-hour job. If they get paid the same either way, then it swaps the incentives from my incentive is to bill as much company time as I possibly can. and try to, make this task cost them as much as possible within the realm of my boss is going to yell at me, versus I just want to get this done in the next 5 minutes so I can go home for the day.
Well,
It definitely changes the incentives. You're saying, sorry.
well, yeah. So my best mate, he works in finance, right? Now, people looking for finance are usually working in 9 to 5. His office hours as well are 9 to 5. So obviously, like he has to contact lenders, he has to contact customers, prospects, he has referral partners, etc., etc., etc. Right? Most of the work that he does is in the morning between 9 and 11, but then he does overtime in the afternoons from like 5 till 7, 5 till 8, because that's when people are home and able to actually talk about it. Like between 11 till 4, he's just waiting for lenders to come back to him, and he's just setting up proposals where he could be doing this at home and not being in the office, and he hates being in the office. But he hasn't been given the opportunity to work from home, because I think, especially after COVID, there was a big thing about bringing people more back into the office to be more social. I think that's kind of a step back to where we need to be going in the future.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with offices inherently, but there's a lot of reasons for people to not want to be at the office, and there's a lot of reasons for people to want to be at the office. But I think once it becomes a dictate one way or the other, and people sort of lose that autonomy and that chance to say, oh, hey, it's my kid's thing at school today, I can't be in the office. You want to give people that freedom, as we say, but freedom without limits actually becomes a constraint. So that's probably off topic a little bit, but basically there's two types of freedom. There's like freedom of I can do whatever I want, and then there's freedom of I can pick from a number of different options. And yeah, definitely after COVID, there was a lot of freedom in the sense of people were free to work from home or free to work from the office. But there wasn't that much freedom of choices. Like there wasn't much of a hybrid working arrangement, or, you couldn't be like in the office for Friday, Saturday, and then out of the office for the rest of the week. A lot of those things got shaken up quite a fair bit. And I would say people are starting to move in the right direction. But it's definitely a big task, and not everyone has read this book, and it's kind of the Bible of that hybrid and remote working situation.
Well, I mean, like in the book, like you have to say someone listening wants to get out of the office environment. In the book, he does put in steps of how to get that done. Ask for working from home every Tuesday or every Wednesday. Don't do Monday or Friday, so it makes it seem like you need a long weekend type of thing, right? Like it's not going to come overnight, but at the same time, it's also you need to show that you're doing the work. Like if you want to work from home, but you're just not going to get the same amount of work done in the office, then I don't think you deserve that privilege to work from home. However, if you're going to if you can show that you can actually do more work from home with a better outcome and achieve greater results and do it in less time, I mean, it's a bit of a no-brainer to actually try and get out of the office as soon as possible.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of discipline involved with doing working from home things, because I'm sure that there's a lot of people, I'm not one of them, but they'll only do work when the boss is watching. And I know a lot of these people because I have a job. And, if there's someone over their shoulder, they will work like mad until that person leaves. And then cat videos on Facebook. Like it's a very night and day difference. But if you're doing that working from home thing, you need to see not only results like you would see in the office, but to make it a consistent agreement, you'd need to see more results than you would see from being in the office, which takes a phenomenal amount of self-discipline. And while the book's called The 4-Hour Workweek, I'm here to tell you, Tim Ferriss doesn't work 4 hours a week. He probably works a lot more than like 40 hours a week, in fact. But he's able to work on things that he finds meaningful, and he's able to work from, wherever he finds himself needed for different circumstances. And I think that's kind of the point of the book and the whole system of the 4-hour work week. It's not to actually reduce the amount of time that you work. It's to improve the way that you work and the lifestyle around your work.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very, very good summary. That's a very, very good summary of the book. I liked it a lot.
Thank you, sir. Do you have any final thoughts on the book before we finish up here?
If there are listeners out there who don't enjoy being in the office Monday to Friday, actually hate it a lot, and want to get out of that environment, I would consider highly either buying this book, or if you don't really like reading, there are hundreds, thousands of videos on YouTube that kind of just like condense the book into some really, really good ways. So I would strongly advise reading this book, because if you follow the steps in it, I think it's a very achievable pathway to get out of that environment.
Absolutely. And we are one of those videos on YouTube. This is going to be the first one on the brand new YouTube channel. So if you're listening to us on the podcast, head over to YouTube, Disciples of Zeus, and we'll be right there waiting for you. But either way, you need to leave us a review, which could just be a like button. You need to make sure you're following this podcast to stay up to date. Leave us a comment to let us know how lovely we are, because our egos just really need that. Unquestionably. And we'll be glad to see you in the next one. But before we get to the next one, pause the video right now. Here's your homework. From me, your homework is going to be asking for 10% off your next coffee, or any quick, simple transaction where you're just in and out. Coffee is a great example, but this could be you're driving through at a fast food place, anything along those lines. Asking for 10% off and starting to think about what a working from home arrangement might look like at your job, if you have one. Your homework for the listener, Ethan?
My homework is to just find one video. I just wanted to find one 10-minute video on the 4-hour work week and study the absolute shit out of it. I want to study the absolute shit out of it and just go through it. You don't have anything else to worry about in your life. Worry about that. That is my homework for the listeners this week.
No doubt. Thank you, Ethan, and we will see you in the next one, dear listener.
James, I will see you soon.